6. Against the dark blue night sky above the Mendip Hills, someone with bright eyes might have been able to make out two tiny black dots, which could conceivably have been ravens, except of course they were far too high up. "It was around here somewhere," said Thought.
"That's what you said last time,"
said Memory. His pinions were aching, and he hadn't eaten for 16 hours. During that time, he and his colleague had been round the world 24 times. Anything the sun could do, it seemed, they could do better. "All right then," said Thought. "Don't believe me, see if I care. But he's down there somewhere, I know he is. I definitely heard the ring calling."
"That was probably Radio Bristol,"
said Memory. Exhaustion had made him short-tempered. They flew on in silence, completing a circuit of the counties of Somerset, Avon and Devon. Finally, they could go no further, and swooped down onto the roof of a thatched barn just outside Dulverton.
"How come you can hear the ring anyway?"
said Memory. "I can't." "Nor me, usually. It just sort of happens once in a while. But it never lasts long enough for me to get an exact fix on it." A foolhardy bat fluttered towards them, curious to know who these strangers might be. The two ravens turned and stared at it, frightening it out of its wits. "If it's about the radio licence," said the bat, "there's a cheque in the post."
"Get lost,"
said Memory, and the bat did its best to obey. Being gifted with natural radar, however, it did not find it easy. "Wharton's in a terrible state these days," said Thought. "Not happy at all."
"So what's new?"
"He's been all over the shop looking for clues. Went down a tin mine in Bolivia the other day. Came out all covered in dust."
"I could have told him he'd do no good in Bolivia," said Memory. "Perhaps it'd be better if we split up. That way we could cover more ground. You take one hemisphere, I take the other, sort of thing."
Thought considered this for a moment. "No, wouldn't work. You couldn't think where to go, and I couldn't remember where I'd been. Waste of everybody's time."
"Please yourself."
"You want to go off on your own then, or what?"
"Forget it."
Thought was about to say something, but stopped. "Listen," he whispered. "Did you hear that?"
"What?"
"It's the ring again. Somewhere over there." He pointed with his wing to the east. "Not too far away, either."
"How far?"
"Dunno, it stopped again." Memory shook his head.
"I'm thinking of packing all this in," he said.
"How do you mean?" said Thought.
"All this flying about and that. I mean, where's it getting me?"
"It's a living, though."
"Is it?"
Memory leaned forward and snapped up a moth. It tasted sour.
"You take my brother-in-law. Talentless little git, if you ask me. Used to run errands for the moon goddess. Then they got one of those telexes, and he was out on his ear. So he set up this courier service, 5 years ago, give or take a bit. And look at him now. Nest in the tallest forest in Saxony, another in the Ardennes for the winter. And I bet he isn't eating moths."
"Nests aren't everything," said Thought. "There's job satisfaction, there's travel, there's service to the community."
"I know," said Memory. "Instead of all this fooling about, why don't we keep an eye on the girls, or Alberic? Maybe they know something we don't."
Thought considered this. "Could do," he said. "It's worth a try." He stopped, and both birds were silent for a moment. "There it goes again. Definitely over there somewhere."
"Stuff it," said Memory. "Let's find the Rhine-daughters."
Malcolm found it difficult to sleep that night. He had managed to get the thought of the two airliners out of his mind, but the meeting with Alberic was not so lightly dismissed. He had been afraid, more so than ever before, and the terrible thing was that he could not understand why. He was taller and stronger than the Nibelung, and he had the ability to make himself taller and stronger yet if the need arose. That was the whole point of the Tarnhelm, but the Nibelung had something else that made his own magic powers seem irrelevant. He had authority, and that was not something Malcolm could afford to ignore. He looked at his watch. It was 2:30 in the morning. He toyed with the idea of transporting himself to Los Angeles or Adelaide, where it would be light and he could get a cup of coffee without waking up the housekeeper. He was on the point of doing this when he heard a noise in the corridor outside. Coombe Hall was full of unexplained noises. which everyone he asked attributed to the plumbing. But something told Malcolm that plumbing made gurgling noises, not stealthy creeping noises. Without understanding why, he knew that he was in danger, and something told him that it was probably the right time for him to become invisible. His bedroom door was locked, and he stood beside it. Outside he could hear footsteps, which stopped. There was a scrabbling sound, a click, and the door opened gently. He recognised the face of Alberic, peering into the room, and for a moment was rooted to the spot. Then it occurred to him that he was considerably bigger than Alberic, and also invisible. The Nibelung crept into the room and tiptoed over to the bed. As he bent over it, Malcolm kicked him hard. It would be unfair to Malcolm to say that he did not know his own strength. He knew his own strength very well, or rather his lack of it, but as yet he had not come to terms with the strength of Siegfried the Dragon Slayer. As a result, he hit Alberic very hard indeed. The intruder uttered a loud yelp and fell over. Malcolm was horrified. His first reaction was that he must have killed Alberic, but a loud and uncomplicated complaint from his victim convinced him that that was not so. His next reaction was to apologise. "Sorry," he said. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "You clumsy idiot," said the Prince of the Nibelungs. "You've broken my leg." It occurred to Malcolm that this served Alberic right, and he said so. In fact, he suggested, Alberic was extremely lucky to get off so lightly, since presumably he had broken in with the intention of committing murder. "Don't be stupid," said Alberic. "I only wanted the ring." He made it sound as if he had just dropped by to borrow a bowl of sugar. "Now, about my broken leg." "Never mind your broken leg." "I mind it a lot. Get a doctor." "You're taking a lot for granted, aren't you?" said Malcolm sternly. "You're my deadliest enemy. Why shouldn't I, dispose of you, right now?" Alberic laughed. "You?" he said incredulously. "Who do you think you are, Jack the Ripper?" "I could be if I wanted to," said Malcolm. The Nibelung ignored him. "You wouldn't hurt a fly," he sneered. "That's your trouble. You'll never get anywhere in this world unless you improve your attitude. And did no one ever tell you it's bad manners to be invisible when someone's talking to you?" "You sound just like my mother," said Malcolm. He reappeared, and Alberic glowered at him. "Still pretending to be who you aren't, I see," he said. "I'll be who I want to be. I'm not afraid of you anymore." "Delighted to hear it. Perhaps you'll fetch a doctor now." "And the police," said Malcolm, to frighten him. "You're a burglar." "You wouldn't dare," replied Alberic, but Malcolm could see he was worried. This was remarkable. A few minutes ago, he had been paralysed with fear. Now he found the whole thing vaguely comic. Still, it would be as well to call a doctor. He went to the telephone beside his bed. "Not that sort of doctor," said Alberic irritably. "What do you think I am, human?" "So what sort of doctor do you want?" Malcolm asked. "A proper doctor. A Nibelung." "Fine. And how do you suggest I set about finding one? Look in the yellow pages?" "Don't be facetious. Use the ring." "Can I do that?" Malcolm was surprised by this. "Of course you can. Just rub the ring against your nose and call for a doctor." Feeling rather foolish, Malcolm did what he was told. At once, a short, stocky man with very pale skin materialised behind him, wearing what appeared to be a sack. "You cold?" said the Nibelung. "Where did you come from?" Malcolm asked. "Nibelheim. Where do you think? So where's the patient?" The doctor did something to Alberic's leg with a spanner and a jar of ointment, and disappeared as suddenly as he had come. "That's handy," Malcolm said. "Can I just summon Nibelungs when I want to?" "Of course," said Alberic, "although why you should want to is another matter. By and large, they're incredibly boring people." Malcolm shrugged his shoulders. "Anyway, how's your leg?" he asked. "Very painful, but it's healed." "Healed? But I thought you said it was broken." "So it was," replied Alberic calmly, "and now it's unbroken again. That's what the doctor was for. It'll be stiff for a day or so, of course, but that can't be helped. If you will go around kicking people, you must expect to cause anguish and suffering." Malcolm yawned.
In that case, you can go away and leave me in peace, he said, and don't let me catch you around here again, or there'll be trouble.
This bravado didn't convince anyone. Alberic made no attempt to move, but sat on the floor rubbing his knee, until Malcolm, unable to think of anything else to do, offered him a drink.
I thought you'd never ask, said Alberic. I'll have a large schnapps. Neat.
I don't think I've got any of that, said Malcolm.
You're supposed to be a German. Oh well, whatever comes to hand as long as it isn't sherry. I don't like sherry.
So it was that Malcolm found himself sharing a bottle of gin with the Prince of Nibelheim at 3 o'clock in the morning. It was not something he would have chosen to do, especially after a tiring day, but the mere fact that he was able to do it was remarkable enough. Alberic made no further attempt to relieve him of the ring. He didn't even mention the subject until Malcolm himself raised it. Instead, he talked mostly about his health, or to be precise, his digestion.
Lobster, he remarked more than once, gives me the most appalling heartburn. And gooseberries.
In short, there was nothing to fear from Alberic, and Malcolm found himself feeling rather sorry for the Nibelung, who, by his own account at least, had had rather a hard time.
It wasn't the gold I wanted, he said. I wanted to get my own back on those damned women.
Which women?
The Rhine daughters. I won't bore you with all the details. Not a nice story.
Alberic helped himself to some more gin.
There I was, taking a stroll beside the Rhine on a pleasant summer evening, and these 3 girls, with no more clothes on than would keep a fly warm.
I know all that, said Malcolm.
Do you?
Said Alberic, rather disappointed.
Oh well, never mind. But it wasn't the power or the money I wanted. Well, they would have been nice, I grant you. I'm not saying they wouldn't. But it's the principle of the thing. You know how it is when someone takes something away from you without any right to it at all. You feel angry. You feel hard done by. And if that thing is the control of the world, you feel very hard done by indeed. Not that I want to control the world particularly. I imagine I'd do it very badly. But it's like not being invited to a party. You feel hard done by, even if you wouldn't have gone if they'd asked you. I know I'm not explaining this very well. You can get obsessive about it, you know? Especially if you've thought about nothing else for the last 1,000 years.
Couldn't you have done something else to take your mind off it? Got a job or something?
This may seem strange, but having been master of the world for 48 hours, that's how long they let me keep the ring, you know, doesn't really qualify you for much. And they threw me out of Nibelheim.
Did they?
They did. You can't really blame them. I had enslaved them and made them mine gold for me. They weren't best pleased.
So what have you been doing ever since?
Moping about, mostly. Feeling sorry for myself. And looking for the ring, of course. And a bit of freelance metallurgy, just to keep the wolf from the door. My card.
He took a card from his wallet. Hans Albrecht and Partners, it read. Mining engineers and contractors, established AD 900.
Most people think the date's a misprint, said Alberic, but it's not. Anyway, that's what I've been doing, and a thoroughly wretched time I've had too.
Have another drink, Malcolm suggested.
You're too kind, said Alberic. Mind you, if I have too much to drink these days, it plays hell with my digestion. Did I tell you about that?
Yes. Alberic shook his head sadly.
I'm boring you, I can tell. But let me tell you something useful. Even if you won't give me the ring, don't let Wotan get his hands on it.
I wasn't planning to, said Malcolm. Another?
Why not? And then I must be going. It's late and you've been a horse all afternoon. That's tiring, I know. Now, about Wotan. I don't know how you've managed it, but you've got the ring to do what you want it to. Not what I had intended when I made it, let me say. In fact, I can't remember what I intended when I made it. It's been a long time. Anyway, is there any tonic left?
No, sorry.
Doesn't matter. About Wotan. He's devious. Very devious. But if you've got the ring on your side...
Malcolm thought of something incredibly funny. I haven't got the ring on my side, he said. I've got it on my finger. They had a good laugh over that.
No, but seriously, said Alberic. If you can make the ring do what you want it to, then there's nothing Wotan can do to you unless you want him to. But I don't want him to do anything to me. I want him to go away. That's what you think. Like I said, Wotan's devious. Devious, devious, devious. He'll get you exactly where he wants you, unless you're very careful, I assure you. How? That, my friend, remains to be seen. The days of armed force and violence are long gone, I'm sorry to say. It's cleverness that gets results. It's the same in the mining industry. Did I tell you about that?
Yes, Malcolm lied. Go on about Wotan. Alberic looked at the bottom of his glass. Unfortunately, there was nothing to obscure his view of it. He picked up the bottle, but it was empty.
I am going to have raging indigestion all tomorrow, he said sadly. Don't let them tell you there's no such thing as spontaneous combustion. I suffer from it continually. Wotan can't take the ring from you, but he can make you give it to him of your own free will. And before you ask me, I don't know how he'll do it, but he'll think of something. Have you got any bisadol?
I can get you a sandwich.
A sandwich? Do you want to kill me as well as breaking my leg? No, don't you let go of the ring, Malcolm Fisher. If I can't have it, you might as well keep it. It'll be safe with you until you're ready to give it to me.
Malcolm looked uncomfortable at this. Alberic laughed.
Of your own free will, I mean. But that won't happen until it isn't a symbol of power anymore. Only a bit of old jewellery. It'll happen, though. You mark my words. See how it ends.
How do you know?
I don't. Alberic rose unsteadily to his feet. Time I was going.
How's your leg?
My leg? Oh, that's fine. It's my stomach I'm worried about. I'm always worried about my stomach. We sulphur dwarves were created out of the primal flux of the Earth's core. We have always existed, and we will always exist in some form or other. You can kill us, of course, but unless you do, we live forever. The problem is, if you're made largely of sulphur, you are going to suffer from heartburn, and there's nothing at all you can do about it. Over the past however many it is million years, I have tried absolutely every remedy for dyspepsia that has ever been devised, and they are all useless. All of them. In all the years I've been alive, there was only one time I didn't have indigestion. You know when that was? The 48 hours, when I had the ring. Good night.
You can stay here if you like, said Malcolm.
That's kind of you, but I've got a room over at the Blue Boar. The fresh air will clear my head. I'll see myself out.
That reminds me, how did you get in here?
Through the front door. I have a way with locks.
And how did you find me in the first place?
Easy. I smelt the ring. Once you started using it, that was no problem.
Alberic went to the door, then turned.
Do you know something, Malcolm Fisher? He said. It goes up against the grain saying this, but I like you, in a way. Up to a point. You can keep the ring for the time being. I like what you're doing with it.
Malcolm wanted to say something, but could think of nothing.
And if there's ever anything... Oh, forget it. Good luck.
A few minutes later, Malcolm heard the front door slam. He got back into bed and switched off the light. It was nearly morning, and he was very tired. 2 ravens were perched on the telegraph pole outside the Blue Boar in Coombe.
It's definitely coming from near here somewhere, said Thought.
Memory had been listening for the voice all day, and he no longer believed in it. You've been overdoing it, he said. Maybe you should take a couple of days off. We can't hear the ring, either of us. It's not possible. In the road below, a short, heavily built man was waiting for the night porter to open the door of the hotel. Thought flapped his wings to attract his partner's attention.
Look, he whispered. Down there.
It's Alberic, replied Memory. What's he doing here?
I told you, said Thought. I told you, and you wouldn't...
All right, said Memory uneasily. Doesn't prove anything, does it? I mean, he could be here for some totally different reason.
Such as?
Memory stared blankly at his claws. Dunno, he said. But it still doesn't mean...
Come on, said Thought. We found him. He's somewhere in this village. We'd better tell Wotan. Oh no, Memory shook his head. You can if you like. If we're wrong, and Wotan comes flogging out here on a fool's errand...
So what do we do? They racked their brains for a moment, but in vain. Then Thought had a sudden inspiration. I know, he said. We'll tell Logi. Then it'll be his duty to pass the message on to the boss. The two ravens laughed maliciously.